Okay, I have to actually read this first because I didn't actually get to read this, just to see what they say, and then I'll move to the next one. I don't know about you all, but we're so effing excited for Worlds to start in 5 hours. Systems. This patch seeks to make mid lane in particular a bit more interactive through nerfs to second wind, Doran Shield, small nerfs to Catalyst. We still like it being strong as a rotational option for typically immobile mages to hold off assassins and skirmishes. Is this totally true? Typical immobile mages? Maybe partially, but most mages are kind of immobile anyway, no? I don't know. Okay, whatever. Like, for example, Ahri was using Roa build a lot in pro play. She's not really immobile, right? But I guess like Orianna and Victor are. Okay. We acknowledge this is probably going to require some follow-up adjustments to top and lane dominant champions, and we're starting with a preemptive nerf to Quinn. We wanted to be cautious as these changes would have wide-ranging impact for the playoffs metas. And so feel more comfortable making these changes now. Yeah, this makes sense. So I understand why they didn't do this pre-Worlds, because this would shake up the game a lot. I think these are very big systemic changes, and when I talked about them a couple of days ago, I said basically that a lot of champions will be buffed and a lot of champions will be nerfed, and there's going to be, the game will be a lot more unbalanced, and the Riot will need to do a lot more follow-up changes on this. I'm not saying that's not deserved, right? Second wind Doran Shield, it is like very uninteractive, but there's also like a lot of pushback on Twitter, how now mages are the most unskilled class and how they have infinite mana. You know, everything is a problem in League. You won't be able to have a happy world. Gwen, despite our best efforts, our Gwen changes haven't had the effect we desired. We're going to be reverting the vast majority of Gwen changes. We wanted to apologize. Kiana has still been posting a bit too strong numbers in Elite in both jungle and mid. We're tapping it down a bit more. Yunara has been relatively popular in higher levels of play with her current tuning. We're wanting to embrace some of the more parts of her kit that are a little underwhelming. These changes this patch attempt to try to make WMAX a more reasonable way to play Yunara and a little bit less binary. Secondly, we're changing E from being a decaying moon speed to be static. Both of these changes are intended to make her easier to play while still keeping the top and pop-off moments that she's known for. Bro, I do have to admit, I have a huge problem with Yunara, and it's her RW. I don't know. I just think that ability is complete no skill. And it's weird that it's on the kit. I feel like it just doesn't make any sense. Like her RW, I hate that ability. Yon has been a little worse for wear for regular players, and D-Shield second wind was the main thing that was keeping him up. With those items being nerfed, we're buffing Yon up a bit. Okay, now we go to the actual one with the numbers, because we don't need to read the other one. Patch 25.21, full preview. Okay, Dr. Mundo is showing up frequently in our frustration service as the most, or at least one of the most frustrating champions. He sports a pretty average win rate and a pretty shallow mastery curve, so it isn't overpowered, but players have been frustrated. We're making power neutral adjustments to make his late game bonking a little bit less oppressive, but in return he'll be able to go where he pleases a little better. Graves is much more popular in China than the rest of the world, but despite that, his popularity elsewhere has taken quite a bit of chop. We're looking to add back one of the feels good changes that make him a little more general and bruisery, as without it, he's not able to hit the thresholds to play some of the bruiser builds. Yunara, we're making changes to Yunara, W back second, blah blah blah. We're also moving Yunara E from being a short burst position tool and removing the decay. Bard's tanky builds have been the norm for quite a while. We're making his AP build slightly more viable. While we don't hate the building that he's building Deadman Spade, he'd also love running around a lot. It would be nice if AP was a bit better on him. Kiana is a bit too strong in jungle, a bit too strong in mid. Our changes nerf her repeated farming speed a little, but otherwise she brought a lot of life back into the jungle. Did she? Because as much as yes, she hasn't been in meta in a while, and yes, it was a shakeup to the meta. You could also argue that the meta moved into, for example, Zat a lot, and the meta moved into like Talon jungle and solo queue anyway. So I don't know if the solo queue would look that much different if Kiana was or wasn't in the meta, if I'm being honest, but okay. So, there are some things we need to discuss here, and I'm about to probably trigger a lot of people, but let's get into it. So, first of all, Bart. A lot of pushback on Bart on social media. Why is this champion being buffed? Now, to be completely honest here, this buff is completely placebo and probably buffs more of his Aaron builds than anything else, because the normal Bard build that good players are doing is just like Deadman Spade into like Lockhead or whatever, so you don't really buy any AP, and with Lianji being a lot very nerfed, people don't really buy Lianji anymore on Bard, so Bard usually sits with like 9 or 20 AP depending on if he's Baron, so this WAP heal ratio buff kind of makes nothing. Kind of does nothing. This is a complete placebo buff. I don't think Bart will really opt into like any supportive item as it currently stands. However, I do think people have a point that why is a champion like Bard not being nerfed? Like, I totally get why Riot is doing this type of change. They're trying to incentivize more off-meta AP builds, maybe some support and enchanter builds, right? Sure. But I still think we can all agree that Bard is just very overtuned, has been overtuned for a while, and I thought Riot would leave him overtuned for Worlds, but then nerf him after Worlds. This is a patch after Worlds, and Bard is not getting nerfed. So what's happening here? Very odd, in my opinion. Israel gets 80 growth by 0.5. I think very good change for Israel. Kinda like buffs exactly what the champion needs. This champion is insanely overtuned. Oh, sorry, undertuned. And insanely weak. I think the weakest ADC in the game. I think this buff is not nearly enough to make Israel competitive towards other ADCs. This champion does no damage. While this is a nice step into the right direction and probably buffs exactly what he needs, and it also buffs like Sheen and stuff, I don't think this is enough. Then we have Kalista, who will also get the same amount of buff as Israel, which is like mostly a late game skill buff. Okay, sure. I think people are maybe slightly sleeping on Kalista, but with like lane swap and everything, and her win rate is still quite bad, I just checked, so makes sense why they're buffing the character. They did like over nerf for a long time ago, and this is post-world, so they're buffing Kalista again. Sure, I get it. Then we have Yone with 280 buff. Wow, Yone is completely bad, guys. He's gonna be meta. No, not really. This buff is actually just gonna do nothing. As much as, yeah, this is 280, this is complete placebo buff. It will do absolutely nothing on the champion. I mean, Caitlyn just got 280. She's a range character that uses 280 way better than Yone. And it did like literally almost nothing to her win rate. So it's gonna be the same on Yone. With Dornshad's second win being nerfed, you could argue that the champ might even be weaker. But regardless of that, yeah, this is just placebo buff that will just do nothing. Yunara. So a lot of changes on Yunara. Instead of making her WB total AD, they're making her WB bonus AD. And I think I have the math here. Let me actually open it up. So basically, I think the way it works is that apparently this is going to be a nerf if you have more than 46 bonus AD by level 6, I think is how the math works. Something like that. If I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I mean, here it says RW is usually a nerf, so I'm not sure if this means only RW or not. Like, I think the RW is basically always a nerf. The W itself, I'm not sure. But you are more incentivized to put points into it. Because, you know, you get a lot more from rank up now. So W max second Yunara might just be the play. And then E is also no longer decaying moon spit, but the cooldown I think is like increased on E, so it won't be as spammable. Because Riot keeps saying that professional players and high-level players that are good at Yunara use E a lot more on average. Okay, sure. I do think the changes are probably good long-term for the champion, and I'm not opposed to them, so this is okay. Diana will have her passive nerfed on jungle monster speed back to 2.8. It used to be 2.6 before they buffed it, so now it's in the middle. It's still good, like the champion is still stronger than it used to be. But yeah, she won't have this insane ton of clear speed anymore, but she still will clear a lot faster than most junglers. Her clear speed is still in the top, like one of the better clear speeds in the game. So I don't think this will do a massive change to Diana. And I think it was a nice attempt to try to make Diana jungle being played at Worlds, but I don't think it's happening. I think AD mids are not in a position to enter the meta, and I think people won't play Yasuo because he sucks, and there's no real reason to replay Diana. She's good in solo queue though. Kog'Maw will lose 5% passive AD, passive attack speed on Q. Yeah, I watched Freak video. He said this is going to be estimated 1% win rate down on Kog'Maw. This champion is at very high win rates, around 53 to 54. It is usually a complete elo printer in solo queue for ADC class, so it does make sense why they're nerfing Kog'Maw. Morgana will lose 0.8 armor growth, so she is being nerfed a little bit more here for mid lane than for bot lane or support because of XP. I think durability nerf, it's not bad. It kind of makes sense why they're going for this nerf, because Morgana should be a type of champ where, you know, if you get close to her, you should be able to burst her really fast. So I kind of get that, and then, you know, armor growth kind of makes sense in my opinion. But she has to obviously be good and play with ranges and stuff, so this will just make it so she can go into like this ult ranges a lot more often, and maybe she gets bursted a lot quicker, especially in late game. But yeah, okay, nerf to Morgana. Probably gonna be a little bit over 1% with this nerf. Kiana, health growth down by 3, Q damage down by 5% bonus AD. Okay, nerfs to Kiana. She will... I don't know if she's reaching the point where she's equal / weaker than her pre-buff state, but I probably don't think so yet, because she got so much from like W attack speed being better and stuff, but this is okay. Kiana will still have very high win rates in mid lane, and she shouldn't be this oppressive in jungle anyway. I still think that maybe nerfing her clear split in jungle could be nice, because I don't understand why every assassin is just allowed to full clear the jungle in 3 minutes and generate infinite tempo. But it is what it is. Queen Q bonus AD ratio down by 20%, so a big nerf to Queen Q. And our damage is now moving to flat plus bonus AD. I don't know exactly what the math here is. Do I have the math on Queen? Let me try to see. Queen. No, I don't right now. I don't know. Someone will do the math, but yeah, I have no idea. Probably a nerf, I'm assuming. So yeah, this is okay. I do think that Queen would be one of the biggest benefits, like champions that benefit from Dawn Shield second wind being nerfed, and I think her solo queue win rates are absurd, completely absurd. So she should probably be nerfed regardless of that. Dr. Mundo is gonna get most likely a nerf here, but I do think that Riot is doing a really good job with how they're approaching this. So first of all, armor growth up on the champion by a lot, 0.8. Is really good on Mundo because the champion stacks a lot of health. So him having a lot more armor is actually a lot more valuable on him than like other champions on average. But they are nerfing a lot of his late game damage of E. And to be completely honest with you, I think this is actually for the better for the game. This will probably make the champion not only less frustrating, because people have probably frustration of how Mundo can kill everybody, but I also think that Mundo should not be a champion where you pick Mundo and you feel more of a carry than on other champions. Mundo should, at the end of the day, be a juggernaut, right? And juggernauts are not only about killing people, they are also about tanking damage. And Mundo right now, in my opinion, does way too much damage as a champion. And I could argue that he should maybe be tankier. So I am a really big fan of this change. So Graves will lose some base MR, especially in late game, like a lot of base MR, but he will get it back with using E. And he gets half of the resists from E, basically, right? So he can get max to 64 MR if he's fully stacked with E, which sometimes will happen in team fights, and this will maybe incentivize him a little bit more to go again more bruiserish builds, like you go Black Cleaver and you use more E's in the fight because you have haste, and then you stay alive longer and you get more value. So I do think that this is like also a directionally good change for Graves long term. So we have Gwen, I'll talk about this in a second. We have Skarner pushed back to 25.22. I am happy that Riot is gonna buff or whatever Skarner because this champion needs it. It is trash. My problem with Skarner, okay, is that I think the champion is insanely uninteresting. And this could be just me, but I think the problem with Skarner maybe is that the E and the R hold too much power. And the Q, and especially the W, is a completely useless spell. Like, Skarner W is the most cosmetic spell I have ever seen in League of Legends. And it obviously had to be nerfed, because when the spell was good, it was mega OP. In my opinion, the problem with Skarner's kit is there's that probably E and R just hold too much of the power. And it would be nice to make W more interesting in a way. I don't know. I just find the kit insanely boring, and it's also a very hard kit, so I don't know. Catalyst of the Unions 50 held down. Riot, you should have done that ages ago. I've been saying it patch after patch, how this is the strongest epic item in the game, whatever. And I also said that you guys should nerf Catalyst, not Roa, but you don't listen. Second Wind, healing after taking damage, nerfed with the flat down. The rune is still going to be occasionally very good, especially on champs that buy a lot of health and you have tough matchups. But yes, the problem in League is that, for example, what's going to happen on this patch is that, let's say you play Syndra versus Orianna, or something like that, and you can't, or Aurora, I don't know, and you can't opt into these runes and Dawn Shield, or whatever champion, right? You can't, like, Yon or whatever, and you can't opt into Dawn Shield second win anymore. You will legit get completely bullied by, like, these early game runes of Scorch, Airy, and it's gonna be a lot harder to lane, a lot harder, and I think it's probably gonna be too much into the side of range, where Riot will have to, like, either buff Melis again, or so. Like, I think systemic change, like, I am worried what this will do to the game. So then Dornsring already commented on it. I think Dornsring could be a little bit too strong on lane bullies with this change, but overall it's going to be similar item. Dornsblade will be basically buffed on vast majority of champions, but nerfed on maybe like auto-attack specific ADCs. And then we have lastly the Gwen. And this will be a very hot take, but I actually do not agree with anything they're doing here. Trying to think how they're wording, how to word here, how to use wording, because I know like people are gonna really disagree. I know there's like celebrations happening all over Twitter, how Gwen is fully back, and thank you Riot for listening to the rework. I think this is a massive mistake that Riot is walking into to reworking the rework. Now, should they leave Gwen in the same state that she's in? Probably not. They should probably do something. But I just have memories, because I know exactly what's going to happen. So this is basically Gwen pre-rework, which basically is a Kayle. It has not that good of an early game, but her scaling is absolutely demonic. It scales probably better than Kayle for some reason. And this champion, I vividly remember, was insanely overtuned. It's just that it goes under the radar because she has the same problem as Syndra, because she isn't strong early game. People often just kind of ignore the scaling part, especially like pros and Hyla. And because pros and Hyla don't play her a lot, then the champion goes kind of under radar, kind of like Syndra, and people think that the champion is not as good as she actually is. I don't think Gwen should be a Kayle. I don't think this makes any sense for her identity. I still have a problem with Gwen W. Like the number buffs they're doing are insane. Gwen is gonna go back to these one-shotty builds that OTPs were doing back then, where they go like Leechbane or Nosher into like Shadow Flame and they just stomp people and they can just drop 30 kills in the game. The R-Slow will be back, which is an extremely obnoxious spell. I have complained about R-Slow for a long time. I remember when Gwen was statistically insanely overpowered, maybe even the best top laner in the game, maybe one of the best champs in the game. People, the OTPs of Gwen community, were coping that the champ is weak because her win rate was around 50 or whatever, 51, whatever. I think Gwen jungle is insanely toxic for the game. I could see Gwen jungle coming back because again, she will monster scale in jungle, and even though there's a jungle monster mod, I'm not sure if that's enough to keep her down. Okay. Cat. Yeah, anyway, am I in queue? I'm in queue. I don't know. I have a feeling this is gonna be bad. I have a feeling Gwen will be insanely OP and it will go under the radar again. I don't know. I don't think Gwen's identity of being a Kayle is right for the champion. I don't think it makes any sense. I think Riot should have like went for a middle version where they partially reverted some changes back, but also partially made the E still a bit stronger early. Some sort of a middle version that we currently have, but not go all the way back where they've just revert because it's like the most lazy thing to do. That's my take. Time will tell if I'm right or wrong, but I've been right so far in all versions of Gwen, and I think I'm gonna be right on this one too. Honestly, the patch, not a lot of changes. Riot is very, very AFK with balancing the game. I don't mind it, honestly. I've always been a hater of Riot making massive changes one patch afterwards, because pros will still play solo queue and they shouldn't play solo queue on really big changes, systemic changes of the game. So I'm usually a fan that the one patch afterwards is very tame and does almost nothing. That's what I'm usually a fan of.